Well, I'm here with a local resident, Gerard Richardson, MBE, in fact, very special local resident, because you've been a volunteer in this community. You're born and bred here, Gerard. How would you sum up at the moment how people feel in this town about the cost of living, the standard of living? Are they happy with the quality of life they've got?
No, I think everyone's anxious. You know that it's been that way since COVID. To be honest, it feels like there's something in the air. You know, whether it needs a good clear out across Whitehall, whether it's just, I don't know. People are frustrated. You know, I mean, around here, for example, it's a very, very strong pro-nuclear area, and yet we don't seem to get the direction from government that we want. I mean, what we want is some real firm decisions on nuclear. We want a nuclear power station. We're actually saying, look, bring a nuclear power station here. How many local authorities and local areas are saying that? But we need some private investment. The only private investment in recent years offered to us is the coal mine, and yet that's been tied up in legislation for 7 years. It's frustrating, and I think that's part of it. It's nothing just directed against the current government. It's a general frustration level that there's a malaise, you know, that something isn't happening. And then for me personally, you know, I run a shop and it's getting harder and harder on the high street. And if you drive from here to Carlisle, let's say, there's an Amazon warehouse at Carlisle. On the way between here and, you know, the next town, Cockermouth, there'll be at least 30 vehicles of Amazon coming to the West Coast. I'd like to see in the Chancellor's budget something like an online tax, like almost like a VAT perhaps, that cuts in when you turn over maybe £1 million or so. It would allow small businesses to continue doing a bit online, but it would level the playing field, because it's getting hard out there, and there's a real issue because the public still avidly support the high street all across the country on Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas. Every high street across the country is packed. But what about the other 9 or 10 months of the year? You know, you've got to remember that there's a community out there, and it's important to a lot of people of all ages, not just elderly. You know, I think some people write it off and say, well, it's high street's just the domain of a generation that's dying out, and that's wrong. It's cruel. So we've got to see something for the high street, and specifically for me, we've got to see something for defence. Yeah. You know, the defences of this country are in a shambolic state. And I say that as an ex-serviceman. I'll probably vote Conservative at the next election. It's kind of died in the wool. I've been tempted to spoil the ballot. I've been tempted. A good friend of mine is actually the Labour candidate around here, and I'd love to give him a vote. But I'm just looking at the state of the defences. If the Conservatives would show them up, I think they would do an awful lot better than they are in the polls.
I'm interested in what you say about the Amazon factory down the road and all of the trucks lined up there. Presumably, I'm playing devil's advocate, that is therefore a good source of employment for the area, people working there. But I guess what you're saying is, well, what does that mean for the community? That might be generating a huge amount of profit for Amazon and it's giving people jobs. But then where do they go to spend their money when there is no high street? Yeah. Look,
Amazon is a fantastic industry, and I'm not knocking Jeff Bezos, I'm not knocking Amazon at all. But Amazon is a low volume in terms of workforce. It's they're quite high-tech warehouses. You have robots taking things down and putting them into vans. OK, there's local delivery drivers, but these guys, you talk to them, they pay the pittance. You know, the high street, you know, your local high street pound, you know, every £10 or whatever you spend, it stays in the area. It supports people who are your neighbours, your friends. Shops like mine organise local events for people to take part in. Amazon don't do that. Amazon don't take part in the community. So I'm not attacking them. What I'm saying is there's got to be a more level playing field. It's got to be slightly more difficult for people to just sit there in the living room and order off Jeff Bezos and supply him with a new yacht. You know, we're out there, support us.
And it feels like that's a conversation that hasn't been had. When you say about this malaise, suddenly these huge changes have happened, these economic shifts, this paradigm shift actually of what our communities look like. And it doesn't feel like anybody voted for that. And it just sort of happened overnight without enough consultation. And the more people you talk to, and I'm going to be talking to a lot of people here in Whitehaven by today, people don't like it. They don't want that sort of industry.
I think people don't understand it as well. They don't really understand what's happened. And you know, if you sit back and take a deep breath, and you look back at the last 4 or 5 years. COVID was a paradigm change in everyone's lives. So, like I say, this isn't an attack on the current government. Things have been going on in this country that seem to have been dragging their feet for decades. I came across an old newspaper. We were quiet in the shop last week, so we were browsing old newspapers. 1992 Whitehaven News, and in the headline it was, "We will not be rushed on new nuclear power." That was 32 years ago. We're still waiting for a bleeding reactor, Look, this, like I say, this is a nuclear-friendly area.
Yeah.
Bring us a reactor, bring us some jobs, get some investment going. I don't know, everything feels like it's tied up in knots. There's a layer of treacle in Whitehall or the civil service, and somebody needs to go in there and sort it. It's the same with the health service, isn't it? And I've experienced that firsthand lately. There are some great people working in the health service, but the systems are terrible, absolutely dreadful.
No flexibility. Gerard, thank you so much.